Hey everyone, this is Clinton.
And this is Dalton.
And this is the LA2 Wrestling Podcast.
So without further ado, let's get ready to podcast!
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the LA2 Wrestling Podcast, where we talk about all wrestling from the past, present, and future. I am one of your co-hosts, Clinton. With me, as always, is Dalton.
And that is right, and we are back on the anniversary of our first podcast just 3 years ago.
That's crazy. I know we haven't been as consistent as we wanted to be, but it's crazy. It's been 3 years.
A lot has happened in the last 3 years, starting the podcast back in 2020 in the summer where, a lot of our friendships really started getting stronger and then branching back out, everyone changing, work, relationships, school. So, it's good to see where we started, even with the little that we've done and how plans have changed. It's good to come back with a strong return. And that's the topic for today's video.
Yes, that is our topic for today. We are going to be talking about our favorite wrestling returns. But before we get into that, we wanted to introduce, he's been on the podcast a few times, but it's starting to feel like he's one of the co-hosts. I don't know, he's getting on here more frequent than usual. Yeah. With us is Max.
What's up, everybody?
He's been on the podcast the last few times we've done episodes. I think you weren't here for the Extreme Rules podcast, but you were here for the ones before that, the All Out, Fall Out, and the Double or Nothing, right?
Yeah, I was on all of those, and I missed Extreme Rules. I think I was out of town when y'all recorded that one.
Right, yeah. But for the most part, you've been here pretty frequently, and you're the one who's been helping us with ideas and, really, pushing us to continue to do the podcast, so thank you for that.
Oh, yeah, no problem. I think it's always fun recording. It's just, I really enjoy it. Just talking wrestling is just so entertaining to me.
I agree. How about you, Dalton? Do you agree?
I do agree, and that's why it's good to have a return, get the three of us back together on the anniversary, or at least when it goes out, and talk about some returns that are meaningful to us, or that we enjoyed, or that were special in some way.
Yeah, I agree. But, so, before we get into our ranking, so we'll lay out the, rules that we have. So we're going to do 5 best returns in our own personal opinions each. So you'll get 15 returns in total unless we have similar taste. But we'll also do an honorable mention each. So you're kind of getting 18 returns, potentially. But, so what technically would you consider a good return? What makes a good return?
I would say a good crowd pop, kind of unexpected. Well, even if it's not unexpected, people have been anticipating the person to come back, and they're always entertaining and keeping you excited to keep watching the show.
That can go into either a long rumored return and the crowd popping for that, or an unexpected, no rumor, no dirt sheets, nothing, and then they just show up, and it's the biggest response you've ever had. So, it can play into that. And I guess going into that as well, what constitutes as a return? For us as well, most of these returns probably have just been in when we've been watching wrestling.
Right,
For the most part. Some of them branch out a little bit more if it means something to us.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's confined in what we've watched.
Yeah, to our era. And
unless we, say, this is meaningful in another way to us for such and
it's
such.
so big you can't really, you can't ignore it.
Yeah.
But so, for example, I know for me, when I went through my list, it was so difficult to come up with 5, because when we initially came up with the idea of this episode, I remember Dalton being let's do 3. And I was there's no way I can just come up with 3. There's no way. And he goes, what about 4? And I'm I still can't do that. And he was what about 5? And I said, I can manage that. Because the thing was, initially I was 10 would be the easiest. But that would just be too many, But then it was just 5 is enough that it's it's still difficult. but it's not so difficult that you're just stressing out thinking about it. But, like, for me, to make it easier for me, I specifically had it from when I started watching wrestling to now, for my personal list.
Yeah, mine's very similar. It's just more of my time era. Because, like, wrestlers I grew up watching, seeing them return would mean a whole lot more to me compared to, like, watching, like, old wrestling. And you know that person was going to return because you've seen it pass. But live action returns is just something else for you.
And it's kind of crazy because, you're talking, Dalton, about how, like, dirt sheets kind of spoiling stuff, and you were kind of mentioning that. Here recently, yeah, there's been some that, like, obviously they're rumored, and sometimes they're like, oh, yeah, this person's definitely going to be showing up tonight. But there's been a couple, I don't know if it's on anyone's list, like, I'm going to give an example, but there's been a couple where it's like, maybe they were kind of talked about coming back, but they didn't specifically say what night. Like, for example, Johnny Gargano's just kind of recently in 2022 when he returned on Raw, that was just a completely random night. Like, they went to commercial, they came back, Johnny Gargano's theme played. Like, it was not really rumored at the time. Maybe him coming back to the company.
Similar to Carlito when he returned.
At Backlash?
Yes, at Backlash. Because, yeah, he's been, like, showing up here and there in different promotions. But we were joking around during Backlash, and, oh, man, it'd be, like, a perfect time for Carlito to hit, and then, boom, it's his theme song, and, like, everyone's going crazy.
It was pretty cool.
That was an amazing return.
Yeah.
It was not on my list, but it was close, for sure.
Yeah.
But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and get on into our list, starting with our honorable mentions. But real quick, just to kind of give you an idea of the order we're going in, it's going to start with me, then to Dalton, then to Max. So, my honorable mention for my favorite returns. Before we started recording, I kind of started talking about this, and I said, yeah, my honorable mention is going to have to do with Max a little bit. And he was kind of confused there, but I'll explain. So back when we were in elementary school, I remember I remember third grade, and me and Max were in the same class, and we were talking. Well, no, this wasn't third grade. We were in second grade. It was 2009, right around the summer, maybe a little bit after the summer. And we weren't in the same class, but we were already talking about wrestling with each other. I think we were in Cub Scouts at that point.
Yeah.
And you were just like, dude, did you hear? Batista's coming back. And I was like, what? Are you kidding me? And he was like, yeah. Now, for most people, this return might not be that crazy. And that's why it's an honorable mention. Growing up, I remember this one being a little bit special because we all thought he was just going to be a guest host, I think it was, of Raw. And then he actually had a match. And then he announced that he was going to SmackDown. I don't know why it's always stuck with me that was a return that like was special, but I don't know if it's because we were having conversations about it or what. But to me, that was a special return. Was when Batista had lost the WWE Championship, had to vacate it because of an arm injury due to legacy in 2009. But I don't know. It just seemed like it was important to me when I was younger. Like, it was, like, super cool that Batista was coming back.
Yeah, I could see that because, like, I say late 2000s, early 2010s, Batista was, like, one of the top dogs. And I remember when he had to vacate that title, and it just kind of shocked me because I didn't expect it. But I guess it's just one of those returns or things that just stick with you all through watching wrestling. It's just like everyone has their moments. Like, one moment I have watching wrestling was a random episode of Monday Night Raw when like Kofi Kingston dumped paint all over like a Randy Orton NASCAR.
The NASCAR, yes. Who was the guest host of that Raw? Was it Kyle Busch?
Yeah, it was Kyle Busch because it was the number 18 car.
Okay. I thought it was. I couldn't remember. I'm not that big in the NASCAR, but I thought it was Kyle Busch. Yeah, because they had the custom Orton, and if it was like, what color paint was it?
It was
orange. Was it orange?
He dumped orange paint all over it was like the camo and brown and tan.
The color's not important. It's just one of those things where I was like, it was very specific. I remember it being like very like a bright neon color
and stomping the windshield in. I remember all that.
You remember when he slipped?
Yeah, he slipped.
He slipped down it. Yeah. But yeah, the Batista thing, I don't know what it was. It just was important. And I think also, so when he vacated the championship, right? He vacated it, but that night that he got injured. They didn't specifically say that. So what was going to happen was that him and Orton were supposed to have a match. And if Batista didn't make it back from the hospital in time, that he was going to have to vacate it and give it to Orton. But the next week, there was a fatal four-way match. John Cena, Big Show, Orton, and Triple H for the WWE Championship, the vacated one. And that was the first WWE event me and Dalton went to. So I think that might be why it stuck to me, because it was the week after that, or it was the week before that. We went the week after. Maybe that's the reason why. I don't know. But when he came back, it was kind of like everything was coming full circle. And I do remember one of my first memories of wrestling was Batista winning the WWE Championship at Extreme Rules in that steel cage. So maybe that's why the return was a little bit special to me. I'm not quite sure. But it stuck with me for, 14 years? So, but with that being said, Dalton, what is your honorable mention?
My honorable mention is a little bit out there. Originally, I thought about putting it on the list, but it's unconventional in the sense that the person had already returned, but it was more of returning to a certain character that people were familiar with. This came in 2013, TNA Impact. It was already Impact Wrestling. It was when AJ Styles re-debuted as the Phenomenal One to aid the Main Event Mafia against the Aces and Eights. Because, having AJ come out and his old, evil ways theme, his dark, broody, vigilante-ass era, and then it just turning into the phenomenal AJ Styles, the old theme song, and then revealing that he was with the Man Event Mafia. He wasn't going to be, he was not the anti-hero. He was with them. It's just something that stuck, and it was big at the time because Impact was still trying to be its own thing, even if they weren't competing with WWE. It just stuck with me. It's unconventional. That's why it's an honorable mention.
So, funny enough, this return was on my list initially. So, initially I was like, yes, okay, I remember this. This was important to me. And I decided to put that on my list. As I was researching my list for, and just kind of looking at stuff for returns, trying to remember things, I rewatched this one. And the thing is that I remember it being a lot better than it was. So, but I agree with you that it is definitely worth an honorable mention. But it was one of those things where it was
mostly just unconventional. It's not really a return.
It's a return of a character, but a very fan-favorite character. Because the phenomenal AJ Styles was definitely better than the evil ways, no one AJ Styles. But that was a cool character, because without that, you would have never gotten Bullet Club AJ. But it was definitely a fun return. So I definitely agree that, yeah, even if you may have had it on your list and you took it off, I'm glad it ended up being on your honorable mention because it's a pretty good one.
Then again, I edited this list last minute just because I was changing things, to be honest. So that's
Same.
also why it got booted off.
I think the AJ return got booted a day before recording. I think it was.
Yeah, this return is on my list, but it is towards the bottom of it, so I guess we all kind of have similar views on it, so it all makes sense of why it is on our list in ways, and it's why it's towards the back of it. But it's all special to us just because I know all of us growing up watched Impact, TNA, and
at least try to give it a chance.
And it was, and AJ then was big star. Everyone knew him, and it was pretty special to see that AJ return because he was one of my favorites growing up watching Impact.
Well, so we got our honorable mentions. Max, what is your honorable mention before we get into our top 5?
My honorable mention goes actually back to the year 2000. I been watching a bunch of older wrestling recently, and this is when Stone Cold returned in. Let me look at this real quick. I have it written down.
Oh, it was right before Armageddon.
Stone Cold at Backlash 2000.
Oh, this was actually different.
He had taken several months off to have his neck surgery, and.
Oh, yeah, because he wasn't at WrestleMania 2000.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is right after he returned from that, because you got to think, this is early 2000s, Stone Cold, The Rock, top dogs, and everyone knew that Stone Cold had taken time off for his neck surgery, and you see him come back, and it's just one of them things. The crowd popped, everyone went crazy. Stone Cold started stunning everybody except The Rock because he was out there to save him from, I think it was Triple H. And say it's just one of them moments like I thought was pretty crazy. I'm a big Stone Cold fan, and it was always good to see him return.
Do we happen to know what feud he went in straight after this return? Do we know? It's just a curiosity question because it's one of those things where it's like, why did he return type thing? If that makes sense. I was just wondering if we knew.
That wasn't the angle where he got run over. That was later in 2000, right?
That might have been 99. Well, no, maybe it wasn't. Because that was Survivor Series when the whole Rikishi thing happened. But I think that was 2000.
So I thought that was kind of how they wrote him off TV.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm trying to figure out.
So maybe that was it.
That happened
so maybe that was
in late
99.
99, and that's what kept him out of most of the year 2000.
Yeah, because by the time that he came back, everybody was feuding. It was brewing towards Armageddon, but that was at the end of the year.
This would have been towards the end of the year, I think.
Well, Backlash normally it's traditionally after WrestleMania.
I can look it up real quick and check when Backlash.
Yeah, just fact check real quick because
maybe
it would make sense for Stone Cold. He'd be written off TV because of the car accident, the car crash incident at Survivor Series.
Well, Backlash it says April 30th, 2000.
Well, hold on.
That was right after WrestleMania 2000.
Yeah, so the issue is I don't, like I said, none of us really know exactly what was going on at that time. But I remember when Stone Cold got ran over, it was initially theorized that it was Triple H. So maybe that was a feud that kind of was going on.
No, the whole thing was that Triple H hired somebody to do it.
Right, okay.
And then it was revealed that it was Rikishi because he did it for The Rock.
He did it for The Rock. Yes. So, but I can't remember when that was announced. So that had to have been right after the car accident. Or like the car wreck. Or when he got ran over by a car.
That's the issue too. It's like...
the next pay-per-view was Insurrection in 2000. Was that when the Plane Ride from Hell was? Because it was in London. I don't think that.
No, Plane Ride from Hell was 02.
Yeah, that was 2002.
Because Brock Lesnar.
That was a overseas tour thing. I think it was Rebellion.
Well, Insurrection is a
exclusive. Yeah, it was. You're right.
Well, I think even 2002 was also Insurrection.
Maybe
they had like Insurrection 2 years, 3 years in a row.
No, you're probably right. Yeah, I think it actually was. That was the London thing. I don't know. That's one of those wrestling things that's a bit foggy for me. Is like the early 2000s and right at the end of the Attitude Era.
I'm trying to pull up the card for it real quick. Stone Cold wasn't on the card. Surprisingly, it has The Rock versus Triple H with Stephanie McMahon and it's The Rock versus Triple H versus Shane in the triple threat match.
Yeah, so it says right here that it was in 1999, I believe, that he got hit. The hit and run. Yeah, Survivor Series 99.
Okay.
Was when he got hit. So that was his first comeback was after, and that started basically the year-long feud between him and Rikishi and Triple H.
Okay. So I definitely can understand why there was such a big pop for Stone Cold coming back at that point because he got hit by a car. So I get that now.
Since November of the previous year.
Yeah, so it had been quite a few months.
He had 5 months.
Man, almost half a year. Yeah. So yeah, that makes sense. Okay, that's a good pick.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that.
So it's just one of them things. Just recently, I've been on and I saw it and I was like, man, that would be perfect for this list because it was such a big thing back then.
Well, I hate to just kind of like, just talk in between, but like that's a good, different honorable mentions, like very different eras in time.
Yeah.
So I don't know, I was not expecting the Stone Cold thing. I'm sorry, that caught me off guard. That's a good choice. I didn't even think about that. That's crazy. But what about the top 5? The ones that we actually felt were on the list. My number 5 takes us back to Extreme Rules, 2016. Roman Reigns beats AJ Styles in the main event, and as Roman Reigns is celebrating, a former member of a faction comes in, and that former member is Seth freaking Rollins. That return for me was insane. Now, it initially almost didn't make the list. This was where AJ Styles' phenomenal character was going to be. But, gosh, this one was interesting because we really didn't know when, not AJ Styles, I'm sorry, Seth Rollins, we didn't know when he was coming back. Roughly we knew, but, he got injured the year prior. He had to vacate the championship, which led us to Survivor Series, Dean Ambrose and Roman Reigns. We just didn't know when Seth was coming back. He missed WrestleMania. He missed, a couple pay-per-views. So, him coming back randomly, there really wasn't any dirt sheets. And if there was, I didn't notice it. I thought this one was a pretty cool choice and a really good return.
One that led to, one thing it unfortunately led to was the creation of the Universal title, because it set up Roman versus Seth at Money in the Bank 2016, and that ended with all three members of the Shield holding the WWE Championship in one night.
That was a pretty cool moment.
But
that
then
part of
it branched off into the brand split because Dean Ambrose would retain the title at, I believe it was Battleground 2016. And so Raw was left without a championship. They unveiled the licorice title, known as the Universal title, and led into that. So, it has its ups and downs. It was good for a return, good for Seth to come back and rebuild himself, but then it's also like, we got the garbage title.
But in fairness, though, I agree. I completely agree. The Universal Championship was
that's the
awful.
only thing, in retrospect, is dragging it.
But at the same time,
but it was also a major return.
Even if Seth Rollins did not come back, we probably would have still got the belt. The same color, same ugly.
Oh, yeah, regardless, yeah.
But
it was still a big thing for Seth to come back, because he would chase after that title anyway.
Regardless of the championship design color, because we all know the red strap is really gross, the return was epic. The feud with Dean Ambrose was pretty cool for the time, and then the triple threat battleground for the World Championship. Because at that point, let's be honest, we didn't know which brand that belt was going to. Because at the time, with that triple threat, 2 of the 3 people were on Raw. We didn't know. We knew one of the brands was probably going to get a new championship, but we didn't know if it was going to be Raw or SmackDown. The brand split and the whole draft was, I remember it being awesome. I don't know how everyone felt about it, but I enjoyed the fact that we were going to get separate shows. And the feud with Seth and Finn, until Finn got injured, was pretty good. So, the return led to some pretty good stuff other than the really bad championship design.
Think about this. Almost 8 years later, in between from 2016 to 2023, 7 years apart, Seth Rollins is vying, in this case, in 2023, he has the title. A championship that was created for a show that Seth Rollins was on because the main title was on SmackDown with a former member of the Shield. That's weird. Because it happened with the Universal title with Seth and Roman being on Raw and Dean on SmackDown. But then it happened again because Roman was on SmackDown with the Universal title, and they had to make the World Championship and have Seth have it. So it's a weird parallel, and they kind of changed it.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think that's quite interesting, and that it all lines up with everything. But just to clarify, this was after Seth returned from his torn ACL, right?
Yeah.
Where he had to relinquish
it was
the title.
his first major story after returning. Kind of like Stone Cold.
Yeah, I got you. But I remember this was after he cashed in his Money in the Bank at, was it WrestleMania 31?
Yeah, a whole year after.
Yeah, and he had to relinquish it. That's one of my memories the most, is just, I remember watching Seth cash in on Brock and Roman. But that is real special for him to come back. And that did lead a lot to that brand split, I think. And I was real happy to see the brand split happen, because our era growing up was mainly hard brand split, and you would see just certain feuds on each show instead of the feud spreading on both of the shows. So I really enjoyed watching that.
The best part about it, before we get into the like other top 5, it's like the separate pay-per-views. It just made it feel better, made it more unique, and then they ended it within 2 years, which sucks. But then again, it's Vince, so what do you expect?
Yeah, true.
Yeah, it was 2 years, wasn't it? Because we had half of 2016, 2017, and then
We literally had a
we
discussion.
went into 2018 because Backlash 2018 was already Raw and SmackDown both.
We had a discussion, me and Colin, like where it ended. I can't remember where it ended.
Maybe where I just said, I don't know, maybe.
It was the year prior. Like it ended with a certain pay-per-view because like TLC or something like that was
Maybe.
a double.
That might
I mean, no,
be-
it was like
that might
TLC was like the last dual or like single brand. It was like Raw or SmackDown had it, and then it went to Royal Rumble, and then everything was the same.
So maybe Fastlane was maybe in the first one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah,
The point is they gave up on it pretty
Yeah.
quickly.
Oh, yeah.
They kept the brand split, but then they was like, you know what, we're just gonna have the pay-per-views.
by 2018,
together.
Vince was like, "Ooh, shiny," and it was Ronda Rousey, so he kind of just stopped it.
Fair, yeah, that's fair. That was Royal Rumble 2018.
It kind of made the pay-per-views, like, I wouldn't say, like, irrelevant, but, like, I feel like they didn't draw as much on pay-per-views as they did when they would combine them with both brands. Because,
They lack star power.
yeah, and that's, like, the main reason they brought back the combined pay-per-views is because they didn't draw as much with these mid-card matches that no one really cared about. The mid-card matches were legitimately mid.
Well, and that was their fault for not building strong characters. That's still what they have a problem with today that are trying to fix with Triple H, but even then, Vince is getting his grimy old hands on everything.
Yeah, when Vince first stepped away for a while and WWE started to be on the rise again, I was so excited. But now to see Vince coming back, and
It's like back and forth.
yeah, it's like a seesaw over here with the content we're getting.
Yeah. But with the brand split, like, pay-per-views, you know, it was cool because, like, you know, it would be like a 3-hour pay-per-view, but you would be able to build story with just the people on one brand. You wouldn't have to, like, take 3-hour pay-per-view and just split it up and make it, you know, just a couple matches or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because, like, I remember one of the very first, I don't know if it was the very first, but one of the very first ones was, I think it was Backlash. I think Backlash was before No Mercy for the SmackDown pay-per-views. You had AJ and Dean for the Day Championship. You had the six-pack challenge for the Women's Championship. And you had the Usos versus Rhino and Heath. On any other pay-per-view, when would you think Heath Slater would get such an opportunity to shine?
hey,
I love Heath Slater, but I'm saying, like, at the time, I mean, for God's sake, you know, he wasn't really getting an opportunity.
yeah, he doesn't have an opportunity, but you know, like, he has kids.
Yeah,
He's
and
got to
he
take
needs
advantage
this job.
of his opportunity.
And that's where that story came from. You know, and the pay-per-views being separate kind of gave that an opportunity to have other people shine. I mean, James Ellsworth got a chance to shine. You know, and that's weird, but at the same time, it worked at the time.
Yeah, that's just one of them things that you got to look back at the time period, and you have to work with what you're given, I guess, and just make the most of it. And so I guess that's why Heath Slater did what he did, and he really took advantage of that storyline with everything. And then there's like James Ellsworth, and like no one cares. So
At the time, he was epic. At the time, he was very epic. But it all started with the comeback of Seth Rollins. So that's why it's my number 5. But Don, what is your number 5?
So my number 5 is a little bit weird. 5 and 4 are unconventional just because it was something interesting. But I thought it was also just interesting because you weren't expecting it. So back in 2021, it was right after WWE had WrestleMania 37. They had just brought back, it was the first, main show that had crowds right after the pandemic. You had Michael Cole and Samoa Joe doing a lot of the commentary. Next day, that Monday, Samoa Joe gets released. Couple months later, Samoa Joe is brought back on NXT. And that was one of the biggest things that caught me off guard because, you weren't expecting Samoa Joe to come back, especially after he'd been on commentary for so long. So him coming back to NXT was something that shocked me and is like, it kind of, for this list in particular, it kind of brings back, because it started the comeback for Samoa Joe that he would be on even today with AEW. Because he wouldn't have been back in the ring had it not been for Triple H re-signing him.
Yeah, I agree. It's just one of them things. Every time you'd hear about like Samoa Joe, and he'd be on commentary and everything. Like, don't get me wrong, him on commentary is entertaining to me. But yeah, but it is good to see him back in the ring. Because about to say, still growing up watching TNA's Impact. That's where I started watching him. I always had a pretty good liking of him, and then when he signed with WWE, I was excited, and then I was a little bit bummed when I saw he was started on commentary. I was like, man, this is probably going to be his downfall.
Well, it's because he kept getting hurt.
Yeah, and like sometimes you just can't help injury, but to see him actually back in the ring was pretty exciting.
Even if it was Karrion Kross.
Yeah.
Well, first off, that's a very surprising top 5. Like number 5.
Well, that's what I'm
for your
saying.
top
It's
5.
unconventional, but for this list in particular, staying within it's like what we've watched and something that caught me off guard. It's like it's more relevant just because Samoa Joe has had that downfall and then that rise back up recently. So,
but at the time, and I know maybe sort of a little bit might contradict what I'm saying. They were really they were treating Karrion Kross like a beast. Now, around that time, I know he definitely lost to Jeff Hardy on Raw.
Well, that's
in
the
about
thing. Yeah,
90 seconds.
They put him back. They put him on the main roster when he was still champ and had him lose.
But he sort of, still at the time, before the whole main roster thing, Karrion Kross was, unstoppable.
He was protected.
Other than himself, getting injured.
He was protected.
Exactly. So seeing Samoa Joe beat him was kind of cool. I understand he had already lost.
Well, especially
at that
coming
point,
back as, the enforcer for William Regal and then stepping into the ring to win a title.
And it was unexpected.
That's what I'm
saying. At the time. It was
and then he had to
very
relinquish
unexpected.
it.
Yeah.
Because of injury. So.
Yeah.
A lot of unexpecteds.
Like a broken record. He'd get a good return going.
And that's kind of why I put it number 5, because it's like, it led to something, and then he left again, and then he got released again. But then he came back in AEW, ROH, but...
Which is weird, because he's been fine since then. He won the belt, and then, he's...
It's like he's just immune to injury in AEW, ROH.
He's like, I love pain.
Right now.
He just accepted it.
Yeah, now in WWE, he'd be wrestle for a month, out 3 months, on repeat, so that's kind of interesting.
He's holding ROH on his back, so that's what he's trying to do.
Yeah, that's all they got going for him right now. Claudio's a champion's not that entertaining, so...
It's bad when people want Eddie Kingston as the ROH World Champ.
Yeah, that's
how
horrible.
Dire it is.
Now, they got the pay-per-view this coming Friday. I'd love to see...
As of recording.
Yes, as of recording. I would love to see Mark Briscoe win the championship and just come the face of ROH, but at the same time, I kind of don't see...
Well, had he not been injured.
Ooh, about that.
Yeah, that's the thing, that ain't going to happen because Mark just got injured.
By the time this releases, this is 2 weeks after the fact, but still.
But other than that, Dalton, do you have anything else to say about the Samoa Joe?
No, mine was pretty... 5 and 4 are pretty quick and straight to the point. It's not much.
So, Max, what is your number 5?
Like I said earlier, my number 5 goes back to AJ in 2013. Turned as a phenomenal one. That was just always big for me. Growing up, I remember me and my brother wrestling in the living room, and his favorite then was Jeff Hardy, and I loved AJ Styles. And that was peak of their rivalry, and we'd just act like them and wrestle in the living room. And so to see him come back a couple years later like that, it just kind of brought back memories and really meant a lot to me. And so that's why I really enjoyed seeing him return as the phenomenal one.
Well, I'm glad that we all had the same wavelength.
We all sort of kind of had an idea of oh yeah, this, because the thing is it didn't make my list. It made your honorable mention, made his number 5. It was special to us to even think about it. Now, to kind of have a little bit of a conversation about it. I know we had some earlier when you had your honorable mention, but the aces and eights thing, it was cool, but it was kind of cool to see Main Event Mafia come in challenge them, and then AJ come back to help them. It kind of was building up to that. It was one of those things where, for me, I guess as a kid, I don't know how old I was at the time, but I mean, I thought that was amazing. I thought that version of Main Event Mafia was cool. I'm probably the only person to think that, but I don't know. That was cool, and then AJ coming back was pretty cool.
You know what wasn't cool? Tito Ortiz and Rampage Jackson
That
being
was
part of
pretty
it.
stupid. That was pretty stupid, I'll agree. But, like, Magnus being in it.
And the
and
sad
stuff,
thing
that was
is,
cool.
Rampage actually wanted to be in TNA more, and then you're like, nah, you didn't even have your Tito Ortiz fight. We wasted time on you. Bye.
Yeah, the door.
He
out.
signed. Like, they sent a ring to his home for him to train, and he was about to train, and they didn't do it. Like, it was one of the biggest TNA wasted opportunities.
That's pretty big, especially when it comes to money, at least, you know. I mean, I'd say one of the biggest wastes is, like, Nakamura when they had the New Japan deal. But
Of talent, yes. Of money, it was most definitely
But Rampage,
Kurt
yeah.
Angle, but
Because they could have 100% gotten some bank with Rampage Jackson. But, you know.
just leave keep him out of the vicinity of doors.
Yeah, just take them off their hinges, just unexpectedly.
Yeah.
Yeah, main thing is just that return was special to me. Brought back a lot of memories of when I was a kid, and it's always stuck with me for that. So that's why it is at my number 5 spot.
Well, I'm glad we all sort of agreed that it was pretty special. So that's cool. You know, AJ Styles is one of the best. So now we're going on to our number 4. So I'm not going to lie. I sort of cheated on this one. But it works. So just hear me out. So for my honorable mention, I mentioned the Batista feud with Randy Orton. So Orton and Legacy injure Batista. Batista's out, but they're pretty much saying like he has to show up for this main event on Monday Night Raw, some point in 2009, to wrestle Randy Orton. If he can't make it into the ring by the count of 10, Orton's the champion. As number 7 or 8, as the ref's counting, the ambulance starts pulling up. Batista's coming back. That's cool. But as the ref's waiting for Batista to come out, the doors pop open, and it's not Batista. It's Triple H, ready to kill Randy Orton. Which then proceeds to a gigantic backstage, assault on Legacy. And I thought that was insane. The Triple H return was pretty freaking cool. This was right after Triple H and Randy Orton's feud from WrestleMania 25, a bit lackluster. And this feud that led to this return after it was the Great American Bash, which I think was just called the Bash at that point, and Night of Champions, which included John Cena. It was pretty lackluster, but this return was epic in my opinion. Now, when I was talking about cheating, here's the reason why. As Triple H returned, he kept losing to Orton, and not only that, he kept losing to Legacy, which was Ted DiBiase Jr. and Cody Rhodes. Triple H couldn't do it on his own, so he called in some backup. He made a phone call. Now, yes, the Triple H return was epic, but what was even more epic was at SummerSlam 2009, the return of D-Generation X. In my opinion, their best run of the 2000s. Now, I know a lot of people think that the 2006 run was pretty cool. Looking back at the 2009 run, I don't care what people say. This was amazing. Their 3 or 4 match feud with Legacy from Breaking Point and SummerSlam, bragging rights, Hell in a Cell, good stuff. Really good stuff. I thought it was a great thing. And then they went on to wrestle Jericho. I thought it was some good stuff. I don't know.
Hornswoggle.
And Hornswoggle tried to join the group. That was amazing. I thought it was amazing. I don't know if I'm the only person who thought it was amazing. But the DX return of 2009 was epic.
I truly enjoyed it. I have vivid memories of that because I know I have the 2009 SummerSlam on DVD, and I always catch myself watching it randomly, and it always just brings back memories. I remember their entrance in 2009 with the tank and the pyro and everything. That was just one of the things that was so crazy to me, and I was always a big DX fan. I remember getting in trouble in 2nd grade for doing the crotch chop, and my teacher yelled at me because I was hyped up. DX was back, and we'd be having fun in class and everything. That is a pretty cool part to have on your list.
You know, I'm glad that you actually got in trouble for the crotch chop, because when I was in first grade, I got in trouble for doing the MVP ballin' in lunch. I got in trouble for that. I remember that vividly, because we were just talking about, it was someone else I was talking to about wrestling. And yeah, I did that, and they were like in trouble. So that I kind of thought was weird. But yeah, the crotch chop, that's well deserved for sure.
Oh yeah, I remember that happening.
That's from good stuff.
So that was always fun, getting yelled at for watching wrestling basically and mimicking people you wanted to be.
I mean, even in the PG era at that time, it was still a bit immature for people like us.
Yeah, very true.
I guess that's fair.
Dalton, what do you think about this?
I mean, it was a pretty cool return, just seeing that DX was before we started watching wrestling, and then we got at least a glimpse right before Shawn retired. But I found it also funny. It's like, I remember the promo that Triple H was doing where he's like, I just need to make one phone call, and if you're not down with that, I got 2 words for you. And I remember being 9 years old. It's like, they just said it in a crowd, and I was like, what did they say? I don't know what they said.
Oh man,
What's the words?
What is the words they said? But also when they had the little video of him, Triple H, going to the day headquarters, which I don't think they called it that at that point.
No,
I mean, they were saying
it wasn't
some random restaurant. It was definitely the WWE headquarters. Shawn Michaels was working the grill at the cafeteria there. That little video thing, like, that stuck with me. Like, it was so funny. I don't know why, but it was amazing. And then, I mean, even more than just that, like, when they came back, I remember the glow sticks, the DX Army t-shirts, their ads for the Christmas time. Like, that whole run, like, was, I don't know, that was insane to me. I don't know if it's nostalgia or what. Like, that whole run was pretty cool. And it pretty much ended at Royal Rumble when Shawn super kicks Triple H out of the ring.
Yeah.
Because he's trying to get that one match with The Undertaker, which he did get. It's just one of those things where it's like that run, I don't know. It was a good thing. And the return at SummerSlam, that's a goated pay-per-view as it is. I mean, that return of The Undertaker at the end there, I mean, that one was pretty epic too. Didn't make my list, but it was pretty close.
That whole pay-per-view to me is just like
amazing.
One of my favorite all-time pay-per-views.
It's so good.
It's so good.
But, I mean, I think the DX return of 2009 was much better than the 2006. The feuds were better. The 2002 return really didn't happen because they just feuded with each other for a bit. I mean, the 2009 feud had it all, you know, and with their feuds with Legacy and Jericho. But the return, to me, was one of their best. But, Don, what is your number 4?
My number 4 is a little, like I said, number 4 and 5 were unconventional. That is because the return in question, many people did not realize that it was a return. Many people thought it was a debut. Because when he returned as a different character, a different name, than when he debuted. Because back in 2003, this man made an appearance for TNA. Made a couple appearances. Handful that ended around 2004, 2005. But by the time that he came back in 2014, by the side of Eddie Edwards and Davey Richards, the American Wolves, and in London, England, I believe it was the O2 Arena for TNA Impact, the investor of TNA, Montel Vontavious Porter, making his return to TNA. It was something interesting because you hear the music and it's like the countdown with the Godzilla sound because he just came from Japan, and he just walks out and it's like you're kind of like shocked. It's like, who is that? You see him walking out, it's like, who is that? And he throws out the 305 MVP chains and you realize who it is because you hadn't seen him since like 2010, 2011 in WWE. A couple years later he just shows up in TNA. It's like that was a big thing, especially for being a return that not a lot of people realized it was a return. And it's like I wanted to throw TNA since I kind of booted off AJ Styles.
Dude, it's an amazing return. Like I didn't start thinking.
It was shock value.
I didn't start thinking about that return until the other day. I had already pretty much made my list. Other than the AJ Styles switch with the DX, This one was interesting. Like, it really caught me off guard. I did initially think it was a debut. I didn't think he wrestled for Impact before.
Yeah, it was a handful, apparently.
And that's the thing. It's just like, it was kind of weird because you didn't think he would be the investor. I did not think that would happen. And I don't know, I feel like I noticed the clock to his theme song before anything. But maybe I didn't. I can't remember.
You wouldn't have put two and two together.
The fact that MVP made it back to TNA in general was amazing. I thought that's a good pick for sure.
Also, seeing the fact that it would have turned into the Beatdown Clan, which would be the precursor to the Hurt Business when he would return back in WWE with Bobby Lashley. It kind of like that return to TNA sowed the seeds for his future. So I mean, at least it was something positive out of it, even if it was not the best run.
Yeah, like Clinton said, I didn't know that was a return. I had no clue that it was a... I thought it was a debut.
And it makes more sense with his theme song because he's talking about he's back. And it's like, I'm back, everybody. It's like, okay, it makes more sense because now he's back in TNA, but as MVP, so, I mean, makes more sense now.
Where you're talking about his theme song saying I'm back, I just can't stop to think about, like, Eric Bischoff's old theme song.
Oh, God. Please tell me none of you have Eric Bischoff.
No.
Thank God.
Don't
well, Max.
No, I don't have
I was going to say, you got quiet.
No.
Well, then who is your number 4, Max?
My number 4...
Out of curiosity, seeing if it's not Eric Bischoff.
My number 4 goes back to All Out in 2022.
Oh, Christ.
With AEW. This was like basically the redeeming factor of this pay-per-view because without this, all three of us know that I was not a happy camper with this pay-per-view. Like, pretty, I wouldn't say like mad about it.
You were more
during the pay-per-view, after the pay-per-view.
You were more upset with Double or Nothing, but yes, this one was pretty intense as well.
But for this one at the time, I think this wrestler was top of his game. Nobody knew what was about to happen with everything because he had just been suspended by the company after dropping the modern-day pipe bomb. And with that being said, it's Maxwell Jacob Friedman, MJF.
Of course you're wearing the Bastards t-shirt, too.
I am.
He's better than you, and you know it. I knew that's what you were going to say. You were talking like, oh yeah, there's like a redeeming return there. I knew it was going to be the MJF return.
Yeah, redeeming, and then CM Punk got suspended, had to vacate the title. MJF didn't get his proper win over him. And
yeah,
it
a
ruined
whole video
else.
on that.
Yeah.
I know, I'm just saying.
If you haven't seen that video, make sure to check it out. It's the
especially
Fallout.
because it was so raw at the time. I mean, it was right after it happened. I mean, God, we didn't know what to think at the time.
Yeah, but I remember MJF being like the hottest thing in wrestling after Double or Nothing, dropping his infamous pipe bomb, calling everyone marks, saying F Tony Khan,
Fire
F
him.
the company, fire me, them cutting his mic, and then him just getting like commercialed off of TV for the longest time. And next thing you know, like they had the casino ladder match in that same pay-per-view, and I can't remember what the name of his tag team was, or the faction at the time. They came out and like beat up everyone in the ring, and then here comes Man in the Mask taking the poker chip off the ring, and them just like acting like nothing happened. Then end of the show comes, they start playing a promo on the Jumbotron, and you see that Burberry scarf getting thrown over his shoulders, and you're just like, oh, I know exactly who it is. And it's just one of them things I was so excited to see because I'm a huge AEW fan, and it just got me going and kind of saved that pay-per-view for me because I was a big Hangman Page fan, and to see him drop the title just kind of hurt me a little bit. Speaking of Hangman, I almost put him at this spot from when he returned to the casino ladder match in 2021 before I think it was Full Gear when he won the casino ladder match and returned in that, because that was good to see him come back. But I decided that MJF's return that's led to what him being the AEW champion now has just topped that.
Which it just does suck seeing the fact that he didn't get his proper win over CM Punk. It had to be over, what was it, Mox? Yeah, it was over Mox.
Yeah, because Mox won the title eliminator tournament.
Again.
But then Regal went and interfered.
That is right, yeah.
Now, I don't appreciate the Regal thing because of how quickly it ended. But
yeah, because he decided to jump ship.
The MJF return was great. It really was. And the thing is, I wish the feud with Punk would have happened. But of course, as we talked about, we have a whole video on it from right after it happened about a year ago. I mean, it just didn't happen. But the return itself was pretty cool. Now, the little build-up to the Casino Battle Royal, or not the Battle Royal, I'm sorry, the ladder match with the mask. He wore the, devil mask. I mean, it was kind of interesting. We all kind of knew who it was already. But then
the way
hearing
that they did it at the end was clunky.
Hearing the Tony Khan voicemail, just be like, "Hey man, listen, I need you back.
I'll pay you
whatever you want." And then you just hear the theme, oh my gosh,
his theme song is just so good to me.
It's really good.
Dun, 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 dun.
Will we get a copyright strike for that?
No.
I don't know.
Okay,
I'm
thank
too
God.
good.
Okay, we're good. But yes, I agree. That return was pretty good. So
it's one of them things that modern day it just kind of got me going because I remember I was so high on MJF, and especially when he got suspended and everything and wrote off TV. But that was just special to me. All right, now we'll get down to our number 3s and let's go to Clinton and see what he has to say for his number 3.
Number 3 and number 2 are a little difficult to swap out with each other, but I'm firm with what I got. Number 3 takes us to WrestleMania 38, 2022. As we talked about Seth Rollins earlier, Seth Rollins didn't have a feud going into WrestleMania. He was upset that he didn't have a match. He felt like he deserved a match. And then Vince McMahon decides, hey, I found a guy. We're not going to tell you who he is until the night of. You just have to be ready. And Seth was just excited that he had a match at WrestleMania. He's like, oh my gosh, yes, absolutely. Seth Rollins comes out. He's waiting for his opponent. And it is none other than the returning Cody Rhodes. Now, the reason why this one's kind of cool is because Cody was with AEW before this. He helped start AEW. He was probably, other than Tony Khan, when it comes to actually being a wrestler, I think he was the biggest influence on the company starting because he was one of the biggest influences on the All In pay-per-view, which was like an indie mixed together type promotional pay-per-view. And then they started AEW. Cody's in there for a few years, and then he leaves. And he comes back to the promotion that he was talking crap about. He's shaking hands with the man that he threw down his throne. I mean, it was just crazy to think that Cody was back. And not only that, he was welcomed back, and he won the match. And that feud Cody had with Seth Rollins, from there to Backlash to Hell in a Cell, where he tore his quad and still wrestled in a Hell in a Cell match and won. That was a great return and a great little feud before, of course, he had to leave for a bit. The return was epic.
Yeah, it was epic. And just to correct you real quick, it's towards pec, not his quad.
I said quad. Listen, a lot of people in WWE tear their quads. We found that out pretty recently.
Yeah,
so
it's very
I apologize.
Runs in the family.
As I said quad, I literally was pointing at my own pec. I don't know. Sorry. Like I said, WWE has a thing with quads.
Yeah, especially Vince, the double quad blowout.
Yes.
Well, and then his son did it on the grandest stage of them all.
Yeah, that was quite entertaining. But to that return, that was so exciting. Still with me being a big AEW fan. It sucked to see him leave AEW, but say everyone has a goal, and I guess that's part of his checklist was to win it big in WWE. He's still working on it, but it's a step towards the towards that for him. Even though he destroyed the throne in AEW and trash talked the company on the mic a decent bit and kept it all going just to support AEW at the time, he still got welcomed back, and they are pushing him to the moon, and it's good to see that he's getting the proper treatment like he deserves, because I always liked him back legacy days, late 2000s, early 2010s.
You like the Stardust thing?
Oh no, I was not the biggest Stardust fan.
Aw,
And like,
that's a shame.
yeah, after Stardust, he had every right to leave the company because they kind of just canned him after painting his face and putting him in a latex suit. Same thing with Dustin, so...
I feel like Cody's having to rebuild that throne like Lego pieces in a video game, and once it's completed,
Then he can win the title.
then he gets to finish the story.
Finish the story.
Absolutely. But the return at WrestleMania was amazing. I mean, everyone kind of predicted it, but just hearing the theme, him coming up with a Cody Vader, I mean, gosh, what an epic return. Especially because the last time we saw him, which not the exact night, forgive me, not the exact night the last time we saw him in WWE, but one of the last big moments we saw him in WWE was in the same arena, WrestleMania 32 as Stardust. Now that match was pretty good. It was I think it was 6 or so man ladder match for the Intercontinental Championship. But to see him go from Stardust to the American Nightmare was really cool. So I think that is why top 3 for sure. We'll probably stay there for probably ever. But Don, what is your number 3?
Speaking about WrestleMania and returns, there's one man who is synonymous with WrestleMania, and one return at WrestleMania that signified one of the best runs in his career. 2004, Kane had just buried his brother, The Undertaker, back in 2003 after helping Vince McMahon in a Buried Alive match. The build-up, the druids, the messages, the pallbearer, the theme, the revamped undead Undertaker coming back at WrestleMania 20 is one of the best built-up returns, especially seeing the fact that Kane had one of the best debuts ever and one of the best returns ever coming back against the Corporation. With Undertaker coming back in 2004, that kicked off the best years of his career. From his stellar matches with Randy Orton, his World Heavyweight Championship reigns, his, unlike Dave Meltzer, I believe, 2 5-star matches with Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania back-to-back, and then leading into the final years of the streak. It's like, that return, grandest stage of them all, in Madison Square Garden, it couldn't get any better, really, than that. Other than maybe if it was in a bigger stadium. But even then, the pop was huge.
Yeah, I agree. That was a big return leading to what I think as his prime. I think that was potentially his prime because I have lots of memories of Undertaker matches through the 2000s. And I'll say I vividly remember the feud with Shawn and all of that, and some of the feud with Randy and parts of feuds with Rey Mysterio. I remember all that, and it leading to, sadly, the streak ending with WrestleMania 30 against Brock. But
at least it gave him some more he was also in one of the best shapes of his career.
it revamped his career to see him return.
Now it's that's mainly, it's Undertaker was the biggest part of a lot of people's wrestling childhood, wrestling anything, the eras, because he was in so many. It's he's a special part of it. So it's him coming back as the Undertaker, not the American Badass, not Ministry Taker, having the revamped original character. It's significant. So it was an easy number 3 for me.
Max, what is your number 3?
Actually, my number 3 lines up perfectly with Clinton's, with that being the Cody Rhodes return of WrestleMania 38.
Okay, well, I mean, at least we're having some similar mindsets.
Yeah, we're all on the same way.
I feel like
same
number
wavelength.
1 is probably going to be the same amongst 2, if not 3.
Yeah,
I'm feeling
I
it,
have an
man.
idea,
I'm
yeah,
feeling
I've
maybe
got that.
number 1 might be the same, but number 1 I definitely think for me and Dalton are the same. But
say even if we want to switch it up a little bit, I do have like an alternate choice with it being like this is going to kind of go back. This is going to like skip ahead to like my number 2 partially because it's part of it. But in the late 2000s, I say Jeff Hardy was the top of his wrestling game in my opinion. And I say he had just lost a steel cage match to CM Punk.
Oh, you're really doing it, ain't you?
A loser leaves WWE match. And I remember that was a heartbreaking night for me watching that episode of SmackDown.
I legit cried.
Yeah, me and my brother were like in
Keep in
shambles.
mind also we were like elementary
7.
school
We believe-
I was like
children.
7, but still, I cried.
We believed that wrestling was real at the
No,
time.
we were told very early on it was fake.
Damn it!
But Jeff Hardy was real.
Yes.
That was as real as it got.
And he got, lost the match to CM Punk and was taken off of WWE, and that was like heartbreaking for me and my brother, because that was like our wrestling world at the time were the Hardy Boys, and that's when I'd first gotten into watching TNA, and I was like, man, it's really gonna suck. Jeff Hardy's never gonna wrestle again, because that was the biggest thing. And then here we go, early 2010s. I'm sitting here watching, I can't remember the pay-per-view, but I know it was early 2010s in TNA.
Oh no, it was a episode of TNA.
It wasn't
Impact.
okay,
Yeah, it was just a TNA Impact.
And I remember some random theme song start playing after a
Asylum match or
after
whatever
after
it
an
was.
Asylum match where I think it was Hernandez won it and climbed out at like the center of the cage, like through the top of the ring thing.
It
was super awkward.
Homicide.
Homicide, I guess.
It was X Division people.
Yeah, I do remember that.
Because you had Austin Creed in there too.
Yeah, and I think Suicide was in it maybe, but I remember that this theme song hitting, and I was like, "Who in the world is this?" And then you see Jeff Hardy start emerging from the crowd, and I remember I was going absolutely crazy for it, just because that was like my wrestling world at the time was Jeff Hardy this, Jeff Hardy that. Seeing him return just shocked me, blew me out of the water. I remember like telling my brother all about it because I think he wasn't home at the time, and he was like, "No way, no way!" And then it just started his. I personally enjoyed his TNA run, and it started that.
Well, up until Victory Road.
Yes, up until Victory Road
11.
2011, and that was just so entertaining for me to see him return to wrestling when I thought he wasn't going to.
Is that your number 2?
It's my number 3.
I was about to say, because I was about to say that was on my list, and then I booted it off just because I felt like I can't put it on here.
That was an epic one. It really was.
That's what I mean.
I think
yeah.
the only thing that kind of held it off, which is sort of another reason, I guess, but
How clunky the match was.
It was, that match beforehand was so freaking weird. That Asylum match didn't make any sense.
Yeah, like
crawling up the top of the
crawl
wall.
up that center of the ring on the top of the cage. Just that's so awkward. It's like even the wrestlers didn't know what to do and how to climb it. Like
It was
Homicide.
funky.
Yeah, like Homicide. He was like even sketched out climbing out of the cage. Like
Well, I think even Jeff said he was supposed to get in the cage, but there was no way he could get in, so he just climbed up and
They
sat.
shouldn't have made a
Sat on
stupid cage. Like it was wonky. But I think that might have been the reason why it wasn't on mine. But the actual return was pretty good. I mean, and also Jeff hits Homicide with an unprotected chair shot to the head.
Way too hard.
Way too hard. This was at that point where we was stopping that. So, I mean, it was kind of interesting.
Like I said, it was on my list, but then I kind of just threw it off. I was like,
Yeah. That's a good number 3, though, for sure.
vivid memories of that one.
Wasn't that also, was that the last episode of Impact that Wasn't that the last one that Bobby Lashley was on?
It might have been. I feel like that was right before they decided, hey, let's try to put it on Monday nights and compete with Raw.
Yeah, they really tried to
it's
do
like
that whole WCW thing.
3 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't last long at all.
So they had a couple episodes that they outranked Raw on viewership and some stuff, but after that it was just like a snowball
It's like, what,
effect.
TNA?
downhill.
Are you sure? I don't think they ever did.
Oh, I know that. I remember watching a big documentary on like the modern day.
Oh, you're talking about that 3-hour documentary
yeah,
on
you've watched
YouTube?
it. Yeah, where they talk the Nasty Boys basically the whole time.
I have not.
Well,
I have not watched it, but I've seen it for sure. I've seen it on YouTube.
Like, honest to God, I doubt the Nasty Boys are listening to this, but it's like it was well deserved.
So I remember watching that video and they talked the Nasty Boys and like Scott Hall and Kevin Nash the whole time.
Why? They're not worth it.
It was because they were all
damn.
Hulk Hogan's friends, and because Hogan was in it, they all got a pass to come back to the company.
You know what? I guess that's fair.
Just like how the Nasty Boys just rode on the coattails of Hogan in WWE, WCW, everywhere that he went, just like Bubba the Love Sponge.
Bubba the Love Sponge, exactly.
He almost got killed by Awesome Kong.
Yeah, they crap talked Bubba the Love Sponge a lot in that too, and that was
Well deserved.
I do remember them also calling Shannon Moore the Super Stoner or something like that in
Oh,
the
poor
episode.
Shannon Moore.
That's a pretty good number 3 though.
That was my alternative because I kind of had figured that Cody was going to make it on the list somewhere, and I just kind of wanted to switch it up, make sure we had plenty of different returns at the same time. But
I feel like these next 2 are going to be the...
Are they going to be the same? They might be.
I don't know. What is your number 2, Clinton?
My number 2 takes us back to Extreme Rules.
Oh, then no, it's not.
But Extreme Rules 2022. It was the main event, Seth Rollins versus Matt Riddle, in a fight pit match.
Oh, yes.
Matt Riddle wins. He goes up to the ramp, celebrating. Lights go off. The return that everyone was waiting for in 2022 for months. Every time a pay-per-view happened, it was like, this is the night. This is the night it's going to happen. And it never happened. Over and over again to the point we just kind of gave up. Then they started doing teases on Raw and SmackDown. And then finally it happened. The return of Bray Wyatt. I don't know if it's because we wanted it for so long. I don't know if it's because we felt like he was released when he was on like the best run of his career. Or maybe it was because I wanted to see what happened post Brody Lee. The Bray Wyatt return was something else. And I know we did a predictions video on Extreme Rules around last year. It was like October or so of last year. And a lot of our predictions was right. But it made me just like really enjoy the fact that like this guy who seemed like he deserved it finally came back. And it seemed like at the time he was going to get treated correctly. And I'm not saying that he hasn't so far. He had his only feud he really had was with LA Knight, who is just an absolute megastar now.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, I mean, it just... I feel like there's so much more that he can do, but nothing would have happened if it wasn't for Triple H bringing him back Extreme Rules 2022. We just were so excited for it at the time. So, I mean, that was one thing I can't say that it doesn't deserve to be on the list for me.
We'll just have to see how it pans out because he's still pending another return because he's not currently cleared to wrestle. Even though we are about to get him as a DLC as of recording for 2K23. We'll just have to see how it goes because it wasn't the same when he came back, especially them not having him wrestle on TV for the longest time and try to build up the Uncle Howdy and then have that one match other than like a couple of dark matches or house shows. And it's like, it was very lackluster, but we'll just have to see how it is if he returns, when he returns, and if it's the same Bray Wyatt. Definitely won't be the Swamp Father, but...
I agree, as Dalton said, it's going to be one of them returns. I think it has something to do with the long run of it to see how that will build up his future and everything. because yes, he only had like a handful of matches, and the one like big pay-per-view match he had was a handful because it was not that much going on in it and kind of lackluster,
and it was a branded match.
Yeah, it was a branded pitch black match with like the black light on almost the whole time, and Uncle Howdy completely missing his dive off the stage or off of the arena, and it being clear that happened, it kind of ended like that, and it kind of sucked. But
well, it's bad too. As we kind of like nip the one in the bud, it kind of sucks because too his comeback was leading to WrestleMania as well because he challenged Bobby Lashley, and that never happened. And Bobby Lashley didn't even get a WrestleMania match, but almost did. The same guy he beat the year before. Think about that. Almost eating 2 L's in a row to bigger guys than him in both muscle and in popularity. Poor Omos.
Yeah.
Omos Sapien for the win.
Yeah, the moral of the story for Bray Wyatt is that Omos deserves better. But
Bray Wyatt deserves better too, but
that's my number 2, though. I'm sticking with it.
Bray Wyatt. Fair. It was a big return. It was a major return.
Dalton, what's your number 2?
Well, my number 2 starts with 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Entering in at number 21 in the 2020 Royal Rumble after his forced 2011 retirement, 9 years away from the ring, Edge finally comes back. One of the biggest, most emotional pops that you will see in modern wrestling. Because someone from our childhood finally came back after it had been teased and had been denied for so long. And he was finally back for his run. Even though it got cut short for a little bit and then picked up. But Edge's comeback in 2020 is the second best that I've seen in my viewing of professional wrestling since 2009.
Not gonna lie, Dalton, you got me right there. You started counting down. I thought you were gonna go towards Chris Jericho's return in what was it, 25th? No,
2012.
When he returned at the Royal Rumble.
Oh, that was 2013.
2013.
He didn't even get a countdown.
Yeah,
that's what sucked.
Yeah, that you kind of got me when you started counting down. I thought you were getting towards Jericho, and I was.
We'll get to the Edge thing real quick. But real quick, when you're talking about the Chris Jericho thing, if I think of a good Chris Jericho return, a lot of people say the 2013 Royal Rumble. Some people even say the 2007 episode of Raw when he just kind of showed up. If I'm thinking of a good Chris Jericho return, it's the 2012 one, the End of the World as You Know It. Initially, it was kind of cool, and then it kind of went to crap. But initially, pretty freaking cool. But yeah, I honestly thought you were going with Chris Jericho for a second there. But yeah, you're right. The Royal Rumble. This was. I know I've said a couple times like, oh yeah, it was close to my making my list. This was right there with the Bray Wyatt one. I didn't know which one I could pick, but the thing is that while yes, I thought Edge, it would be cool to see him come back, I never thought he would come back. Bray, I was anticipating it. So, but yeah, the Edge one was still pretty great.
Well, see, that's my thing too. My top 3 were locked in, like they were automatic, so I knew what place they were going for me. Because Undertaker was one of my favorite wrestlers. Number 1 has a special place in my heart, and number 2 is just like. This was something that no one thought they were going to see. Almost after 10 years of not being in the ring. And, like, rumors, but none that were really substantial because it had all been put to bed for the most part. It's like he's never going to return. It's a neck injury. He's had so many surgeries on his neck. He ain't coming back. Almost like Daniel Bryan. And it was emotional. You could see it on his face. And you can feel it. If you were, there, if you were just watching on TV like we were, it was a big deal. So.
I totally agree. This was one of the biggest returns, I think, of all time for me. one of the greatest stars of our childhood, and him just being able to return after. I remember being heartbroken that he had to give up the title and retire. Just seeing him come back was just mind blowing and game
in the best
changing.
shape of his life.
Yes, it was just such a shocker. No one saw it coming, really. Just crazy.
So, Max, what's your number 2?
Like I said, number 3 kind of has something to do with number 2, but with my number 2, it goes back to WrestleMania 33. One of the biggest parts of my childhood, if not the biggest part of my childhood, in a tag team ladder match. Say, theme song hits, it's the New Day coming out, and you're like, oh, it's the New Day going to be in the match, and
they were the hosts as well.
They were the hosts, and you were thinking, oh, they're just going to put themselves in the match, going to be real entertaining. And then here comes the Hardy Boys out, returning to WWE after how many years off was it? I know it was
For Matt,
it was only like
About 7.
7, and then for Jeff it was
from 2009, so
Yeah,
it was
about
8 years.
About 8 years, so it was like 7-8 years for both of them. Seeing them return, the crowd absolutely explode and go crazy for the Hardy Boys coming back, and them going out there having a great ladder match, winning the titles. That, in my opinion, they were the kings of the ladder match, and so to see that happen was just so entertaining for me, and really got me truly excited for wrestling at the time, just to see my childhood back in WWE, back on top of the tag division.
And you see, Max, that's my issue. That is my number 1. Like, the Hardys come back at WrestleMania 33.
Well, hold on, time out. You never asked me what my number 1 was. You kind of jumped in front of me.
Well, I'm just saying, it's like, that is, like, my number 1. His number 2 is my number 1. I feel a little bit disrespected.
You're not going to ask me what my number 1 is, Max?
Let's get after it.
My number 1 is WrestleMania 33, The Hardys return. It's a great return.
It is the best.
It's the best. For us, at least.
In that moment, when you hear, who could this team possibly be? And everyone before that was going delete.
Who?
Well, they're going who, but it's like before that they're like delete. They were all wanting the Hardys. It was rumored because they had just dropped the ROH championship,
to
like
the
the
Young
tag
Bucks.
titles, the night before in a ladder match.
Yeah, to the Young Bucks in a ladder match, and if I'm not mistaken, it was the Hammerstein Ballroom.
I believe so. And they had just finished their run in TNA being killed off, just because TNA. But that music hitting and everyone's realization of what is happening, that it is finally happening, that the Hardy Boys had come home in that big arena, and the Hardy Boys having their moment finally at WrestleMania for a win, because Jeff had not had a single win at WrestleMania. Matt had like a handful, maybe 2, 1 at the most I know of, because it beat Rey Mysterio for the Cruiserweight title.
To get at you with that, what about the Matt versus Jeff match? Was it WrestleMania 25?
Matt had 2 wins.
Yeah, there we go. That was another one.
But like Jeff had nothing.
Gotcha.
And for them to win the tag team title, something that they couldn't do like 3 WrestleManias in a row. Just about. It was definitely 16 and 17. Might have been 18 as well. It's like 3 WrestleManias in a row. They couldn't win the tag titles. And they had to fight each other years after that. And almost 10 years after their last WrestleMania together, they're able to finally pull off the big one. Watching that with anticipation and finally hearing the Hardy Boys music come back and have them one last time at WrestleMania was something. It's like, that is a moment that I know I will never forget, because it was my top WrestleMania moment of all time.
So to kind of continue on what you guys were saying and kind of give my personal opinion on it. So you guys mentioned the Hardys had wrestled the Young Bucks. I think it was the night before.
It was the night before.
For the ROH tag titles. That's when the Hardys dropped the tag titles to the Young Bucks once again. The thing is you mentioned the end of their run in TNA to then ROH, then to WWE. But the thing is, it's not only that. They were on their expedition of gold. That's how he said it. I know that sounds stupid, but that's how he said it. They were on this expedition of gold. And that was the last thing they needed, was the WWE Tag Team Championships. And they succeeded in doing that. So that was the thing, that was the biggest thing. Yes, we wanted to see them come back to WWE. That was where they started when it comes to the big promotions.
The Hardy Boys, at least.
So seeing them come home was just amazing. Especially because we were talking about how sad it was to see Jeff leave. Now, Matt, yeah, it was too, but there wasn't no big, loser leave SmackDown like Jeff was. So to see him come back was amazing. And they were able to finish their Expedition of Gold. And so that's why it's the biggest thing. Is it completed something that wasn't a WWE storyline. It was their storyline. It didn't matter what promotion they went to. So that's why I feel like, to me, that's my number one. And it is the best WrestleMania moment ever, in my opinion.
To me, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I understand people, have more connections to other wrestlers. I mean, people have connections to, John Cena, The Rock, Stone Cold. But the Hardys, that's our guys. That's who we've always,
Carolina guys.
Yeah, that was something we always loved. So seeing them come back, especially at WrestleMania, and then Jeff winning his first WrestleMania match, I mean, doesn't get better than that.
And so that's what irks me. What did this son of a bitch put as number one?
What did you put as your number one?
My number one was Dalton's number two. I have to say Edge at Royal Rumble. That was just so insane to me. I remember going crazy for that. Yes, the Hardy Boys return was absolutely goated in my opinion. But I just feel like the unexpectancy of Edge coming back kind of
after retiring for so long.
After being out of the ring for so long, out of action, and everyone truly thought that he was done for just because neck injuries are pretty serious, and at the time, you didn't see people come back from neck injuries. The biggest neck injury someone came back from was Stone Cold, and that was...
Well, even at that point, up to that point, it was Daniel Bryan.
Yeah, well...
Because even his only lasted a couple years.
Yeah, exactly. But just to see Edge come back, after being gone for 9 years, and absolutely no word of him coming back, and just the absolute eruption of that stadium, and watching him just tear it up in the Royal Rumble, and spear everybody, and have his little rated RKO moment in the ring with Randy, and I thought that was just so entertaining. And Randy. Speaking of Randy, I'm truly waiting on Randy's return to the ring.
If it ever happens at this point.
I've heard it's 50-50 he returns.
50-50 retires.
Yeah, I'd really love to see Randy come back, do one last run as champion, and probably call it a career just to be safe on his end, but I feel like that'd be truly entertaining. Just that's how I look at it. But for me, Edge's return at the Rumble was just insane, blew my mind, top tier.
Well, I'll say it's interesting that most of our selections were related in some way. Either we had it honorable mention, placed one higher, one below. Our top pick is somebody else's second pick. We all had the same wavelength. And we didn't say anything to anybody about our picks.
No.
I know I didn't.
No, I didn't. We all kind of just mutually kept quiet so we could have our genuine reactions to each other's picks on here so y'all can hear it.
And the fact that we were all pretty close because we all grew up around the same time periods, same eras, and the same people, that it was really close. Because honestly, some of those, I know 4 and 5 were kind of throwaways, but they were also just like something I could throw onto a list. But like the top 3, the top 2 especially, those were the moments where it's like they're important
to us,
to a wrestling fan like us who grew up in that era, watched them wrestle. One wrestler had to retire early. The other 2 were off in other companies battling other demons and things before they could come back and finally have that one last go around. Which now they're trying to repeat it in AEW, but it's probably not going to work.
Oh,
Just saying.
I'll say Jeff recently in AEW has been lackluster since his return. And
Matt's return or debut in AEW recently has just been lackluster.
Yeah, and
everything about it has just not been it.
Yeah, but Jeff at
Jeff especially.
What was that last pay-per-view?
Forbidden Door?
Not Forbidden Door. Before that.
Double or Nothing.
Yeah, Jeff at Double or
2023.
Nothing. Jeff at Double or Nothing was
whether it was worked or if it was real.
Yeah, whether if it was worked or real, he looked an absolute mess in the ring, sadly. And I did see people calling for him to retire after that match with him. People say that his whisper in the wind was he's supposed to fall off the top rope, and the other one he was not, but he went up for it and just absolutely ate it off the top turnbuckle and slipped off, and it looked really bad, and he had several other spots in the match that looked pretty rough, but I'm really hoping it was supposed to be worked and that he's not actually looking like that in the ring, but that was his first actual match back after leaving
Rehab.
Yeah, after rehab from his DUI, but
Hey, but at least Edge is going strong still.
yeah,
So at least one return has still been fruitful.
yeah, we have Edge still killing it in WWE. Hopefully, going to be going for his last title run soon, and then
Maybe.
and then wrapping it up and calling it a Hall of Fame career. And
2-time Hall of Fame career.
Yeah.
Edge and Christian.
yeah,
Edge and Christian, baby.
yeah. And then you got Christian in WWE doing AEW doing a good bit of managing for Luchasaurus. So
Give bit of nothing.
he had like one match against Hook, and it lasted about 45 seconds. So
We had a ladder match where he barely did anything
no,
against Wardlow.
But with that being said, I think we all had some unique choices. Some of them were obviously we agreed on. Some of them we had our own choices and kind of shocked each other. But that concludes our favorite returns. What are your favorite returns? Let us know in the comments on YouTube. Or comment at LADoWrestling_podcast on Instagram. Thank you for listening. My name is Clinton. You can follow me on Instagram at ClintonWells2001.
And I'm Dalton. You can follow me on Instagram at LADoBrand.
and I'm Max. You can follow me on Instagram at Max Mooney.
And with that being said, we'll see you next time.
Peace.
See ya.